This is the first time I actually went and I built something with the modern tools available to us today, the advantages, looking at it. It's kind of been fascinating.
Your power came from your credibility. That technical credibility came from having done it beforehand. So it sounded like you were motivated to get your hands dirty at least once.
Go understand a little bit, because if you are beyond being just curious, I think it's beyond just get your hands dirty if you really want to do something with it and not be left out of this race.
Welcome to another episode of AI Product Leader. Every week, we shine a light on what it really takes to join the AI world. Real conversations with real AI builders, founders, product leaders, AI experts, technologists, and everything in between to understand where the AI world is right now and what that path looks like, whether you're building AI products or a career in AI. I'm your host, Polly Allen. I'm the founder of AI Career Boost, where I spend my time helping product leaders navigate the world of AI and transition and thrive in AI leadership roles. And I've spent my career in both product management and software development sides of the AI or the software development ecosystem. I'm an ex-Alexa AI principal product manager, where I launched the very first generative AI answers on Alexa. And I'm super excited to welcome our guest today, Shampa Banerjee, who is a PhD, is a powerhouse chief product officer who has scaled global digital platforms from scrappy startups to billion-dollar growth engines. As EVP and CPO of Pluto TV at Paramount, she helped drive the platform from 20 million to 50 million monthly active users and accelerated revenue to 1 billion ahead of schedule, expanding across Latin America and Europe. Prior to that, she grew Eros Now to 150 million across 135 countries, delivering 240% year-over-year subscription growth. It's insane to look at your track record, Shampa. She's also served at both CPO and CTO across venture-backed startups and Fortune 500 companies, building world-class product engineering and data teams from the ground up. She's a physicist by training, and she brings a rare pattern recognition to complex systems, pairing both bold product vision with disciplined experimentation. A woman after my own heart in every aspect. Today, she advises across growth stage startups to Fortune 500s, aligning AI, global go-to-market strategy, and inclusive leadership to scale impact. Shampa, thank you so much for coming today. I've been so excited to talk to you. When you talk about the kinds of things you've accomplished and the growth you've overseen, it's really exciting to hear and get your perspective today.
My pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure.
Wonderful. So as I mentioned, you come from a physics background. I'd love to hear more about, get to know you a little better, and how did you get into physics, which then led into technology?
I know it's a question I've been asked before. So, physics was still is a passion. As a child, I kind of read the biography. I was reading the biography of Newton, and I kind of said, I want to be like him. That's where my love for physics started. And I kind of went ahead and got a PhD in physics, in high energy, particle physics. And the problem is in academia, that was the career path everyone in physics had, right? You finished a PhD, you did a postdoc, then you got into a tenure track position somewhere, right? And I was noticing more and more people spending time doing postdocs, like the fifth postdoc said, so how long do you do this, right? And then I felt that as a theoretical physicist, unless I went to Wall Street, I felt that I probably didn't even, what do I do? I have no marketable skills, And I was having a conversation with a friend who was in Silicon Valley. She was at HP. And it's kind of funny. I just said, I'm just not marketable. I don't know what will I do. I'll be a postdoc the rest of my life, And she at that point was talking to a startup here, and they were looking. And while I was speaking to her, I just said, hey, hang on. I have to see if this thing is converging. She goes, what's converging? I'd written some program, I was written some simulation code, and I was like, is it converging? And she said, you told me you had no marketable skills. I said, none whatsoever. And she's saying, hold on.
You just said
You probably have some of the hottest skills right now in Silicon Valley, right? I'm dating myself, and she actually introduced me to a startup which was serving ads online, one of the first ad servers, and as I said, they interviewed me on the phone, they flew me over, and they offered me a job. And the rest is history. I was just going to try it out for a year. I was going to see that, let's see if it doesn't work, we'll see what happens, right? But I never went back.
And people don't recognize sometimes that a physics degree, exactly, it involved coding. It still does.
It does, right? And you're writing code. None of the physicists think it's a tool that you use, right? You think that, hey, hold on, a tool can be a very precious tool you have in the toolbox that can actually pay more money.
Exactly. So then you landed in Silicon Valley. What an exciting
I landed in Silicon Valley. And to me, it was not just the money. I'm pretty sure I didn't know how to negotiate. They offered me a salary that paid way way more than a postdoc salary. And I was like, yeah, I took it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh. And then I realized, oh my God, they probably hired me because I was the cheapest of the lot. Who knows? I don't
Yeah.
know. But honestly, it was very exciting. That the times were exciting. It was one of the first companies that served ads online. And then, the work was very exciting. Then
Yeah.
Silicon Valley was exciting. And then from there, another startup, and I actually went into, I did one startup was in a financial, I stayed for a very short time. And then I went, I got people were being, they were trying to poach you from different companies. And I felt very, I think, honored being poached into another company. Also, it was interesting work. And then I ultimately ended up being at a startup which got acquired. When Netscape got acquired by AOL, we were like same part of the deal. The reason being it was a calendaring app.
Oh,
And
okay.
the app, it was an enterprise calendar. Netscape was the first enterprise calendar we had. And they saw that when AOL was acquiring, oh, this is a great thing. And said, oh, this is a startup. We use this. If they're here, let's meet them. And it was part of the acquisition.
Let's just buy, if they again,
This
just part
is
of, we got to buy this, buying everything at the time.
right.
Absolutely.
And then AOL was buying companies every week those days, and people have forgotten what AOL is now. But there were two phenomenal companies, Netscape, without the browser, the entire internet revolution. It was like the chat GPT of the internet, when you think
Yes.
of it, right? You
Right. For
know,
it to hit the mainstream, it needed that
Right.
to,
It hit the,
yeah,
internet,
good analogy.
existed before that, of
Yeah.
course, and there were browsers before that too,
Yeah.
And as a physicist, I used to use them, like there was Lynx browser and so on and so forth, because,
Yeah.
we were transferring large files and, but so anyway, so that's how I ended up, in Silicon Valley, and I stayed. And that AOL, I was part of the Netscape part of AOL, in the West Coast. And I had some very interesting, I was at the good luck of being able to manage and work in some very interesting groups, working on very interesting products. And I was in engineering, just not in product. I came in as, as a
As a coder.
engineering lead, and then I became a manager very fast. For whatever reason, I must have had some qualities. I resisted being a manager, but I was made into a manager quite early on. But the products were so interesting, and they were successful products. So I stayed
Mhm.
on, and that's the rest, as they say, is history. I
Oh,
stayed on.
amazing. Amazing.
So,
And what an incredible time. I remember we've had some conversations offline where you've talked about like actually like working shoulder to shoulder with folks who are, are now luminaries in tech
oh,
circles and stuff like this. That
absolutely. I remember, Ben Horowitz, and he
Mhm.
kind of left soon after, but Ben Horowitz was like, we were in the same floor and we had all cube, it was a cube culture. And I didn't know who he was, I was like, but he was in their group was writing, he's running the shopping, I think, Diblet or whatever it was. He was the nicest guy. And I know, taking a printout or something, and I was cursing the Netscape enterprise server. I had a beta version because, I was like, oh my God, there's so many problems, blah, blah, blah. And I told him, and I was, I think, printing out the code to look at it or something. And he actually said, oh, immediately, like in seconds, he sent somebody, the architect, who
Yeah.
came in, was on my terminal. These were things. And some of these people like then made their own companies. They became giant companies. So you
Yeah.
didn't even, and then of course, when Ben Horowitz left, I think people were very sad, and then the guy who was who was the CEO of the startup, when Ted Barnett, went and started running that team, but yeah, and and you kind of go, oh wow, I've worked with these people, I know these
Right.
people, they're like fantastic people, right? And they were fantastic people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like there's such a storied time. There's such a thing in our culture about like revering this, though, the birth of the internet in Silicon Valley and to have been like in
It
the
was,
community.
and I think the interesting part is right now when you see what's happening, it's very similar, right? It was very similar. And also many of the things like people are saying, like, okay, I remember there's a joke about, oh, the .com, bust. And they would say, oh, you had pets.com and, Webvan and all.
Webvan,
Webvan
yeah, all
by the
these
way,
big
we used.
things that
I
blew
still
up.
love, but you know what I said? It was just like technology, you stop them something, wait for something. Those concepts were fantastic concepts, the right concepts. Now you couldn't have had Instacart without web. That was the idea. Webvan was Instacart, right? And I still remember because I used to be so busy. And as I said, AOL was acquiring companies. There were, teams were merging and so much work. Webvan saved my life. I think, well,
Yeah,
God, I don't have to make another trip to the grocery store now, right? So, and pets, everything came back. And those things
right.
came back, in many ways,
Yeah,
right? So,
totally,
so
totally. Exactly. Well, we'll get more into that because I'm really excited to talk more about, how your lens on having seen that level of transformation is different from, when now we're looking at the technology trends, how fast everything is changing today. But I want to dive in first to what you're doing today. So you're advising across nonprofit growth stage, Fortune 500 companies, helping them adopt AI into their organizations. Can you talk, it's lovely to hear in concrete terms, some of the things company that you're exploring doing with AI.
So yes, so some, I what I noticed, some companies, they are trying to, everyone has an AI mandate. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's given, right? So
yeah,
everyone's AI mandate, and they're failing. Many of them, and people are not talking of the failures. And
absolutely.
what I'm noticing, a couple of things. One of the things, they're just bolstering AI on top of things that already exist. My biggest thing is one of the things looking at it. First thing, see, this is where I'm a physicist primarily. I
Yeah,
always look, is this candidate even something AI can help? Do they understand the capabilities of AI? Maybe AI is not the solution for this thing, and you're just kind of putting AI because what companies don't understand. And I was doing some venture experiments
hmm,
in which case you realize very soon, very fast, you can do a prototype quickly, but once you want to launch it, the costs kind of just go up. And
yeah,
then you have to be very smart in understanding that is this the right candidate, or should we reimagine the thing in a different
yeah,
way,
yeah.
right? That's another thing, right? So I think that's one of the things, trying to help, the companies understand that, startups, even that like do this, don't do that. That's where my lens comes in, the experience and lens. And I'm also, kind of helping, nonprofit with its CRM,
Oh,
and
interesting.
it's a, yeah, and it's like they're really strapped for resources, right? So kind of, I'm trying to help them, hey, could they get some agents, AI agents, started that, hey, you could, because some of this is not like, it's not that difficult to do, but
Right.
it could really, really help the business kind of grow the business very quickly, for their fundraising and, managing their donors and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah,
So it
absolutely.
could,
And
so
and I love that lens on it because I think whether it's companies or nonprofits, they think it's hard, they think it's inaccessible if they are resource strapped, but they tend to look at cost savings instead of that
instead of
growth.
seeing what and growth, that's the thing. My lens is always growth. What can this? Yes, you can save cost and do nothing, and then you'll die. Or you can invest in something, be smart what investments you make, and then your thing could multiply,
Yeah.
right? And the interesting part is like, I see some people there are two I see in companies. One is this aversion for AI in the sense that everything is wrong. They don't quite understand. I said, see, I was right. They ask random questions,
Right. And they're like, "Oh, see, it's crap. I
it's
told you."
crap, right?
Yeah.
Versus that, hold on, how
Yeah.
did you design this? How did you
Mhm.
design the question? How did you? And also, there's also basic. They do not understand how modern AI works. Because once if they do, they'll have a better. This is what I can leverage, and this. Why should I go to an AI for this? Right? I don't have.
Right, right.
Right? So
Absolutely.
that's something I'm noticing, right, and helping. And so
So how do you help organizations like that when you come in? Is it about, do they need someone with your experience just asking the right questions? How do you see your
asking the
role?
right questions. She's seeing what's working, what's not working. Ideal state, what would they like to see? I usually kind of like to ask that. Imagine, if you had a magic wand,
Yeah.
how would you like to see your business operate? And then kind of go back from there and see where they are, and then kind of assess that. Look, the issues are, and sometimes it's people issues. Believe it or not, technology is
Oh,
not
I
going to
believe.
solve it. Technology is
Oh,
not going
more
to
of that
solve
seems to be
it,
the trend. Absolutely.
right?
There's a culture change or
It
resistance to
is, because
AI.
that's another thing, is the culture. Because you can come and say, okay, use AI, but half your staff doesn't know how to use AI
Yeah.
effectively,
Yeah.
right? They're using it like, or if you say do not use AI, but your staff anyway, they are using it because it kind of helps them, right?
Right.
And
But they're just
without the
lying to you.
education, right? And without the right education, right training, they're
Yeah.
doing it wrong,
Yeah.
right? And so essentially kind of assessing that and kind of helping them see what problems AI can. First thing, understand the benefits, real benefits of AI.
Yeah.
Understand what it cannot do. Like one of the biggest things I noticed, the reason why it's wrong, do not understand. And it's a concept I'm very comfortable with. It's a probabilistic system at the heart of it, and some people go, oh, it's going to get better. I said, you do not understand probability. You do not understand. There was a time, by the way, I did work on chaos in
Chaos
physics.
theory. Amazing.
Chaos theory. I have
Yes.
to work on
So
chaos.
applicable. right
one
now
of the
of these
things, and
systems.
chaos, the people don't, chaos doesn't mean random. Chaos essentially, you take a system, you know how to predict the behavior of the system with the initial conditions. But some systems, if you slightly change the initial conditions, the results are going to be completely different.
Massively
That
different.
is chaos, right? That is
Yeah.
chaos. But even within chaotic systems, there are things you can look at.
Yeah.
There are certain conditions under which they behave predictably, right?
Mhm.
And I kind of, and every time when I come back to it, say, but as we know, there's a slight, I mean, this is the reason, because you have this slight perturbance, that we
Yeah.
have introduced,
There's
that
no
is allowing us
changing.
to do all these things, right? And therefore that slight amount of non-determinism, whatever, for lack of a better word, will always be there.
Right.
It'll not.
It's the actual feature. It's like it's
Yeah,
that
it's a
sound
feature,
model.
and we're leveraging that feature. People don't understand, and therefore that's why you need guardrails. That's why you need human in the loop.
Yeah.
That's the reason, right? You have to, depending on what systems, and so there's a lot of, when I go and people who truly want to make things succeed, there's also an education there, where I'm kind of
Absolutely. The
helping
right
them,
mental models.
right?
Oh, I love that.
Because
To be able to bring both that perspective of like, hey, we're going for growth and having achieved what you've achieved in terms of like global scale growth at this mass pace, but also what I find is lacking so much is it's funny. It's that real world situation of like, how do we ground this in the real world and like physics? Right? How do we bring this back to concepts we
back,
can
because
see?
I
And
always bring it back to physics,
yeah,
sadly.
yeah, exactly. It's such a great like dual perspective to come at this area from. Fantastic. So I'd love to get your perspective on how you see how is this technological shift we're going through? Do you recognize some of the same things you saw when you first came to Silicon Valley and everything was changing with the birth of the internet? How is it the same? How is it different?
So I'll tell you, there are three fundamentals, right? I feel, and we are the three P's, because lack of a better, but related the people. And I bring people because there's a cultural shift that needs to happen, right?
Yeah.
People need to start getting comfortable with uncertainty, you know, the
Everyone wants to go back to very certain
predictability,
times. If we could do that, that would be great.
right? Predictability used to be one of the mantras, right? It has to be predictable. Every quarter we need to comfortable with uncertainty and figure out what can you predict from that, what will be, what's
Mm,
possible. Like, people instead of saying this is what it's going to be, need to, well, it's going to be between this and this, right?
yeah.
I'm just saying, right?
Yeah.
That
Totally.
kind
Yeah.
of the conversation, so that's where I bring people, the culture. People need to get comfortable with the new
Absolutely.
paradigms,
Yeah.
and that was there too when I had come, internet, the .com, whatever, boom. The same thing, some people were just, and they were also saying, "Psh, like, this can't work, or this is whatever it is, this, blah, 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 right? You have to keep an open mind. So I think there's a culture part to it. That's why people, product. And when I say product, I mean the business. What are you building?
Hmm.
What are you building? And I don't think that is a fundamental question that hasn't changed, because it always should have been, should we even build these things? What is it going to
Exactly.
solve? For whom is it going to solve?
Right. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and
It's
will it
even more
make
important,
money?
I feel, because
Pardon
we
me?
it's even more important because I feel like
That's
there's so
more
many
important,
companies
right?
getting this like
Because
AI mandates and being told build with this tech
that's
as
the
opposed
thing.
to
Because earlier, what happens, technology was your moat. I think technology is commoditized now. That's no longer your moat. So therefore, it's very, very important to do that discovery and understand, should you even be building it? Is it the right thing to build? And
yeah,
are you truly, using the right, leveraging the right capabilities of AI? And if, again, is it even, some things are, even if it is a candidate for AI or not,
yeah,
right? It's like
right.
this, because there's a whole economics has changed, right? That's
Yes,
the thing. So when I say the whole
absolutely.
economics, right?
Yeah,
You have to understand, it's like you have to still be able to retain your customers. Will this, by leveraging, by redoing this with the AI, whatever you want to do, will it retain your customers? Will it grow your customers? Will you actually be producing more? Because there is a ROI quotient to this.
absolutely.
Without this, there is no business,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
I think, so to me, and the third thing is the process. The processes have to change. Actually, I hate to say this, most of our processes were from the manufacturing era. They then
Mm,
came here, right? And then with the digital era, Scrum, whatever, this, that, whatever, and kind of the relics of, manufacturing kind of stayed on, right?
yeah,
When people would kind of go, and I said, but hold on, like, I remember when we earlier on, people would say, like, we're writing software for manufacturing, you're manufacturing wheels of a car. Your biggest thing is you have to make exact same wheels, right? Copy for software is no brainer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so there are lots of organizations, how you shape your organizations and all that, the personnels you have. So that's what I'm saying. The process that has to kind of change, and you have to look at it, in a holistic manner to see what stays, what has to go in this new paradigm. How do I organize my teams to kind
Yeah.
of support this and make
That's
this
it. And
successful?
that's what's it's so interesting. We're organizing what we're building and how we're
Right,
organizing our team
because
too
that's
at
it
the
for
same
me. I
time.
always think, okay, what would this organization look like, because it is different,
Yeah.
right? It is
Yeah.
different in certain things, and there are people who are, I've talked to some people, they're saying I used to be a project manager, a program manager. And this, by the way, it's nothing against project managers. Many a times I feel some of them could have been automated away a long time ago. It's like, why do I need? And I know I've told many of my engineering managers who had worked for me in the past, like, you don't need, you have tools, you can manage it with the tools. Why do you need a whole project management team to be kind of bothering you with these? And you should have the wherewithal, and you should have the
Hmm.
knowledge to be able to manage with these tools, right?
Right.
Depending,
Yeah.
so some of those things we have to look at it through a different lens and see where that goes. How do you organize the teams? Who now, where does I hate using the word power, but where does the leverage shift?
That is an
Understand?
interesting one too. Absolutely, right? Who I think most people are trying to figure this out right now is like, how do I get leverage in the new organization? How do I position myself for that?
Position themselves, but I think, but I'm thinking of it more as or from a think, you're the CEO or you're running an organization more in that manner. How
Yeah.
do you shift things, whereas, and I'm not, that's why I don't want to use the word power.
Power.
It's not a
Right.
power play. It's not
Right.
a power play necessarily, but things are shifting, certain
Yeah.
things, will not, because, think of it, like UX designers, right?
Yeah.
The entire UX is changing,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Exactly. The whole paradigm of
Right,
how
I
we
mean, the whole,
interact with
right, how
computers.
you interact, it's like, hold on, and some of these were like, I've spent a lot of time with entertainment and media, right? People are making this pretty set, but nobody's really coming, you unless you're Netflix or somebody like was a very well defined brand presence where their
Yeah.
journey starts with you. People don't come to you, people are starting from Google, they're searching for something, and that has now shifted to the LLMs. People are going and asking, having a conversation. I'm just saying, so the interface, they're talking to it,
Right.
interface has changed, right?
Yeah.
Interface has changed, so
Absolutely.
where do you start? So I'm just saying, so the whole thing, how people do their work, so it's a big change. We're all trying to figure it out, but I'd kind of seen it before, right? In the sense, in
Right.
a very different way. Is I think the only big difference right now, it is happening much faster.
Okay. Yeah. You get a sense that it's a different level of
Yeah.
acceleration.
Yeah. And it's like you can't just wait and see, but hold on, wait. No, no, no. You wait out, you're gone.
Totally.
You'll
Totally.
vanish.
But increasingly, CEOs need help and advice from people who are keeping on top of these trends because there's no way
That's
to
the
keep on
thing,
top
right?
of it
Yeah.
yourself
Yeah. Yeah.
and run a
And
company.
while I talk to these people, I also need to therefore keep my, like I need to know what's going on, what's exactly,
Yeah,
happening, what are the latest, greatest,
exactly.
mechanisms.
So speaking of that, how did you get up to speed with generative AI? That wasn't your background. You had coded before, but a long time ago.
Yeah, I actually have worked with AI. I used to actually work at AI company 10 years, 10 more than that,
Yeah.
ago, right? And it was not old fashioned AI, but it was using, natural language processing and stuff, but it was still very different from modern AI,
Yeah.
right? So
Today's
one of the
generation.
things actually, Polly, I did take your AI career boost, that was one of the reasons, and I did a couple other, I took a thing from Marilee, one of her courses, I forget what it was called, early on, just to kind of, I just said, hey, I have to kind of understand. I'm always the kind of person I feel, I've been a leader long enough that if you don't understand the underlying infrastructure, and this is such a big shift, but if you
Yeah.
don't understand the nitty gritty, or at least get your hands dirty a little bit,
Yes.
and you don't have to kind of become, even I coded for a while. As I said, I was somehow promoted to management very early on. But I think what gave me my strength, and even when I moved to products, which was a very natural shift for me, that gave me a huge leverage, understanding the mechanism of how things are working. I was able
Absolutely
to make
working.
much more
And having been
intelligent,
hands-on with it.
hands-on, intelligent. So that's why I would never come to my teams, and engineers loved me because I would ask them. And when in the CEO was saying, oh, but why can't they do it in 2 weeks? What if you had 20 more engineers? I said, And I'd kind of say, stop. I was the wall for them. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, let me sit down and have a chat with you and explain to you why that
Yeah.
doesn't work,
You
and
can't
they
have
respect
9 women have a baby in a month.
exactly right. And they respect me for it because they understood the nitty. Oh, but it's like, some people who've never seen a database, they think the best they've seen is an Excel spreadsheet. And yes, but databases don't quite, work like
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some different
The other
exactly. Yeah.
complexities, that you have to, I'm sorry, they have to do it, cannot work like, oh, but I can do this. And I actually had a CFO tell me this. I don't understand, Shampa, why your team is taking so long, to make, but on Excel, I can do this. I said, I wish I could be running the company on an Excel
Yes.
sheet, spreadsheet. I mean, you can run the financials, but the entire technology part of it, but it doesn't work like that. And I have to sit down and draw him some diagrams because I believe in that. This is what needs to happen. And you
Yeah.
cannot just do it because you can just make a horrible mistake and your entire business will be
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
for hours. You don't want that to happen, right? So for me, that, AI, so it worked, and then I actually did use because I was running, in entertainment media, doing recommendation systems. They were all AI driven recommendation systems, right? It's the algorithms have drastically changed, they're with the LLMs coming in and everything,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. In terms of the
And I'm
recommendations,
not sure, pardon me?
just in terms of the richness of the recommendations they can give.
Absolutely, the
Yeah.
richness. Although, I have to still, I'm still, again, that's where evals come in and you have to see, how do I measure the richness? How do I measure, it's doing a better job? Is it truly doing that much better? You start asking those questions, right? At what's the price for that? What's the price?
Yeah.
But, so I have always kind of been using it. And in fact, one time I remember, in entertainment, streaming media, especially, people are, we have something, a whole team called programming team. And what that program, they program the entertainment, like what goes and where and how, and usually they're experts of certain genres and they decide what people would like to watch, other than your algorithms deciding. So one of the things was, of course, algorithms deciding based on what you're watching, that was one way. So the other way I had, and this was quite a while ago, this was probably in 2020 or something, I'd suggested, what, because you're always like the real good programmers, as you call them, they're subject matter experts, they know what they're doing. And I said, what if we used AI to kind of exactly and I don't think 2020 had all the tools and all the algorithms, but essentially, if I could get their avatar to come then start programming more channels, if they learned how they were programming
Right.
and
You
come into
scale
the
that.
business and scale that, right?
Yeah.
If you could so it's kind of always been, I've kind of not completely be away,
Yeah.
but it has always been there for me,
Well,
and then
and
of
it sounds like
course,
you knew that your power came from your credibility, that technical credibility came from having done it at least once
yes, exactly.
beforehand, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it sounded like you were motivated to like get your hands dirty at least once to
Oh
be able to
God,
ask the
absolutely. And
question. Is that fair?
that's the reason, that's the reason. And now with all this vibe coding and everything coming in, right? And that's one of the reasons I wanted to take your AI career boost thing. Just like boom, quickly, I want to see what's out there, what's happening. And it's
Mm,
very, very, very interesting. And it's kind of a lot of information, a lot of content, right? And
yeah.
it's impossible to try every tool, but there are so many of them. But I said, but at least I need to try my hand at this, and I kind of I made a, AI meeting brief,
Meeting brief, exactly. I was really excited. Let's talk briefly about what you built as part of the program for your capstone demo. So, because it's been exciting to see, there's actually been some excitement about potentially
I
taking
know.
this
I
to
was
market.
surprised, right? I did it more like, okay, it's like a toy. I'm going to do it. But it's something I could have used. That, hey, I have these meetings every day. So, if something could just kind of summarize and tell me what it was about, who I'm meeting with, and so on and so forth. That was the thing, right? And
Yeah.
it, didn't take that long. It took me a little more than what people think. It took more time than it's like I didn't do it. Some people said I was tying my shoelace and I, vibe coded something.
Right.
No, but it took
Over my
longer than
shoulder
that.
while I was biking, I
Yeah, it just
coded
like,
something.
doesn't work like that. But yeah, so
Absolutely. So it's like a meeting brief, looks at your calendar. Tell us a little bit how it works.
so it's a meeting brief. So it looks at your calendar, looks at who you're meeting with, and
Yeah.
then the idea is it goes to LinkedIn, it goes to what's out there. Maybe they spoke somewhere just 2 days ago or something. It goes and it kind of gathers all that information, summarizes that for you, and you can ask it questions. Oh, they had they spoke yesterday at whatever, some summit.
Okay.
What did they talk about? It can
Nice.
just
So
come back
pulling
and
in
tell
all
you.
that
Yeah,
information.
and you can just gives you so it's a richer you have the information and your admin doesn't have to spend hours kind of going and figuring this out. And it summarizes their LinkedIn, summarizes things that they have done. You can in principle integrate it with other internal systems if you had. But in this, the incarnation I have it very simple. It
Yeah.
looks at your calendar, sees who the person is, comes back and summarizes for you and kind of suggest why they might want a meeting with, why you're meeting.
Oh, interesting too. So it has a little
So
bit of like
it
prediction
does,
and
in that kind of, you have to kind of
everything.
refine that a little bit to see how good that is. But
Yeah, exactly. Do the
that's what it
evaluation.
is.
Amazing. So I know you're looking at potentially like taking this to market and stuff. You mentioned you'd done other AI courses, but this is the first time you built something
I
with
absolutely. This is
generative
the first, first I built something, because, I kind of, have a fairly good understanding of data science and all that I've done in the past because, as a physicist, all physicists are kind of data scientists, right? All those algorithms I've used and everything. But this is the first time I actually went and I built something with, hey, modern, with the modern tools available to us today, the advantages looking at it. And yeah, this has kind of, it's kind of been fascinating,
AI.
and,
Fascinating.
and I, yeah, and I was surprised. I was chatting with friends, and some of them said they wanted to be design partners for my I just said, okay, let me think about this twice.
Now I need to decide, go back and do that critical evaluation of like, is this the business I really want to start? And
Yeah, I don't think I'll start it as a business.
yeah,
you know.
amazing though that it's potentially productizable. Incredible. It's really so great to have a group of us all building together. I
I
think
know it
it's
was so
very
much fun, and actually, honestly, I want to take it to Cloud Code, which I kind of sat one of the Saturdays, a few Saturdays away. That was the reason I said, "Hey, let me just move it to Cloud Code and see what can I,
how much
what shape,
further I can
yeah,
take
how
it.
much further can I take it?"
Oh, amazing. That's
Absolutely.
incredible. Shampa, it's really incredible to see. I mean, your drive to get hands-on, to be able to be that technical, like that credible expert in the room and the translator, that curiosity took you all the way down to like fully building out your own product. It's really cool. If you had advice for other folks like you who are like, I know I learned by getting hands-on, I want that technical credibility, how should they get started in AI if they want to?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would start, with there are some good newsletters they can look at, but I think, taking one of these courses, find one, you can ask, I think it's a great place because you have to start somewhere. You have to educate yourself. There are courses available online. I think, Coursera has some courses, like actually somebody who's not at all, does not understand arithmetic, I guess, or mathematics, wanted a like a simple, and what's his name? Andrew, this is fantastic. He has this AI for all, course, and she was like completely, oh my God, I just said, because I keep hearing, I want a better understanding, which I really loved about this person. I said, okay, go take this course. There are courses if you truly are, but if you have been a little technical, you've known something, start looking at it. My thing is start understanding the underlying technology, understanding science behind it. I think that's important
Totally.
because once you understand that, it gives you, now you know what to do with it,
Right.
and people, I would say get beyond being just superficial, and beyond just being just I've used the LLMs. Google has now been replaced by the LLMs, right?
Right.
So that
Everyone's
is
using
not,
ChatGPT. So that's
yeah,
not a differentiator.
that's not really knowing. Go understand a little bit because if you're beyond being just curious, I think it's beyond just get your hands dirty if you really want to do something with it and not be left out in this race. That would
Amazing.
be my suggestion.
Get hands on. Awesome. Thanks. That's a great suggestion. Well, thanks so much, Shampa. We have time for one more section, and it's plugs. So I think the biggest thing you want to plug is Shampa herself. How do we get in touch with you, Shampa, if people have needs in the advisory space, especially in entertainment for different size companies?
So I would say shampa@gmail.com, or you
Yeah.
can go to my LinkedIn and so you can get in touch with me. And yes, if you're in entertainment media, which I've spent a lot of time with, and you're running into, you need to get more modern, creator economy, kind of, want to do something beyond superficial, want to differentiate yourself, you want to, feel free to come talk to me.
It's wonderful. Exactly. Get time with the person behind the growth of like Pluto TV and how she would use AI to
So,
help you.
and I'm pretty sure I had, also the times and everything. You got lucky, and
Awesome. Well, from my side, we always love to plug we have our free masterclass once a month. It is the Path to AI Product Leadership, be coming up soon. So be sure we'll link that in the show notes as well, where every month we go through, hey, what is happening for AI leaders in the space? What are the skills that they need to be able to transform not just their skills, but their leadership for the AI era and being able to take on and lead these initiatives and help others who need our help
exactly right.
through this amazing transformation we're all going through. Wonderful. That's our episode for this week of AI Product Leader. Thanks again so much for joining us, Shampa. These
Thank
were
you, Polly,
amazing
for
and valuable stories, and
such a pleasure. Such a
such a
pleasure
pleasure.
talking to
Thank
you.
you so
Okay.
much.
Okay.
Talk to you soon.
Bye bye.